What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Six Pack YouTube channel. I'm your host, Dylan Clemens. Here with me today, Michael Plant and Jordan Schultz to talk some breaking news. What's going on, my friends?
Not much. How about you? And how about you, Jordan? How you doing?
Doing good, man. Got a quick round of golf in this morning, so can't complain. Been a good day.
Yes,
That
it's a
is a good day.
beautiful day here in Wisconsin as well. But before we
Wish
get
it
into
was as beautiful in Cali, but we'll take it.
no, it's hot in Cali right now. Jordan and I were talking about that pre-show, man. Too
They're like
hot.
110 right now. No, thank
Oh
you.
Lord. Oh
Yeah,
Lord.
yeah. Too hot. But before we jump into the DeAndre Hopkins news and him signing with the Tennessee Titans, I just want to remind you, please hit that like button. Please subscribe to the channel if you don't already. And then head on over to fantasy6pack.net/plans and check out our memberships we got going on over there. If you're into fantasy baseball, we got the number one ranker in all of fantasy baseball over there, Keith Lott, showing you his rankings. Our fantasy football cheat sheet just dropped as well. And you could also go check out Joe Bond's rankings, who was the number two ranker in the Fantasy Pros competition last season as well.
Remember, first is the worst, second is the best.
Bingo. But what do you guys say? How about we jump into the Hopkins news?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's break it out. You got the contract details in there?
Yes, I do. So he signed a 2-year, $26 million contract with some incentives in there. But Mike, we're going to start with you first. You're going to give us a little bit of the redraft perspective, and then Jordan's going to give us some dynasty stuff. Let's just start with a basic question. What do you expect this signing to impact the Titans offense?
I fully think it will impact the NFL's, like the actual Tennessee Titans offense much better than it's going to affect the fantasy side of it. All right, because they were lacking a number one wide receiver. Everyone was hoping Burks was going to be the guy this year and step into that role, and he still very well can. But, with Hopkins thrown into the loop, you got Chigakonkwo, who is also supposed to be the second leading target guy on this team. I think it muddies the target share a little bit more than what we thought was just going to be to Chig and Burks, and maybe a little bit to Derrick Henry. And we're already talking about a low volume passing offense. Definitely, so that definitely frightens me a little bit there. I mean, honestly, the only one I want at their draft value right now is Derrick Henry, just because he's probably the only one going at a value at the moment. Burks was because he was the only guy, but now that the signing's there,
I was going to ask you, what do you think? How far is he really going to drop, though? Because he was already at wide receiver 36 in underdog ADP. So I don't, like you said, that was
I don't see
value as he was the
maybe
number
like
one
36. Guy. Maybe like 36 to that 40 range. But I mean, if you're getting him at the 40 range, I think he'll do better than wide receiver 40. Because Davis Pang brought up a good point in our Discord chat. This affects the efficiency of all these guys to be a lot more efficient this year. But typically when it comes to being more efficient, it's less plays. All right. So less targets, less opportunities, essentially, is what I'm kind of getting at here, which, is great for like yak receivers like Treylon Burks, who catches the ball and just takes off afterwards. Somebody like Hopkins, who's more of a possession receiver, I think he's going to be great for third downs. Tannehill is going to look his way, red zone, all of that. But, I mean, I really can't see him getting like 1,200 yards this year. I mean, that's what, like, for example, here's just my last thing, and I'll let you go. And I know it's a little varied, but I wanted to bring this up. I tweeted out, and I did find this info from What the Fuck Stats. But careers as Tennessee Titans, Randy Moss in his last 8 games. Now, granted, he was 33. He had 8 games, 6 receptions, 80 yards, no touchdowns. Then you got Andre. Then you got Andre Johnson. He was age 35 when he signed with them. 8 games, 9 receptions, 85 yards, 2 touchdowns. Julio Jones, the latest one. He was 32 when he signed with them, so only 1 year older than Hopkins right now. All right, and Julio is just as good, if not better, as a wide receiver in the NFL as Hopkins. 10 games, 31 receptions, 434 yards, and 1 touchdown. So, I mean, this offense is not a pass-happy offense. So if he gets 1,000 yards, it's a big plus. Don't get me wrong. But the realm of possibilities lean more towards maybe like 800 yards, 700 yards, maybe like 5 to 7 touchdowns. I think he gets the most value if he gets 10 plus touchdowns this year.
Yeah. After he came back from the suspension last year, his productivity was pretty much based on volume, I feel like, as well, because he was just getting peppered with targets.
Oh, 96 targets in 9 games.
Kind of like what you said. He's just he's not going to get peppered in targets because all those targets really aren't going to be there in this offense. I feel like like you kind of alluded to it earlier about Derrick Henry. He's probably going to see fewer stacked boxes now with DeAndre Hopkins in town. So it could open the offense up that way. But
like
yeah,
Hopkins ADP and underdog right now is wide receiver 25. Now, that's not
stay
bad,
there, right? It's probably going to stay
I think it goes up. It goes up. He's now with a team. He was in the wide receiver 25 range because he was a free agent.
Okay, so how high do you think he's going to start going now? That's what worries me.
If he gets above wide, that's a good question. I did not have that pulled up at the moment. My bad.
Hold on, I got underdog ADP pulled up right now. He's going ahead of DJ Moore, Christian Kirk, Brandon Ayuk, Deontay Johnson. And to be honest with you, I'd rather have DJ Moore, Brandon Ayuk, and Deontay Johnson over DeAndre Hopkins, even with him signing in Tennessee now.
Deontay Johnson's where I'm kind of like, that's where I start to think about it. But the other two I'd much rather have this year.
Sure,
and
yep.
Dynasty.
Like all those guys, like at least for me, my goal in fantasy football is to chase volume. And that's why I loved Hopkins, in Arizona, because that was a pass-happy offense. We saw it in 9 games, 96 targets, just insane. I don't think he's going to average 11 targets a game, 10 targets a game in Tennessee. And that's where DeAndre Hopkins makes his living, is based on volume.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. But yeah, Jordan, I think we could hop over the dynasty side of things, and I don't know if this really hurts Tannehill, Henry, or Hopkins from a dynasty perspective. So I'm kind of curious to what your thoughts are looking towards the future with them drafting Will Levis in this year's draft, and if this might help him develop some.
Yeah, I mean, so full disclosure, I wasn't the big Will Levis guy coming into the draft. So I mean, but anytime you can add like a player at Hopkins caliber, that's going to help development. But I would be more interested in the contract. Do you know if like the second year is fully guaranteed, or is it like kind of one of those like second year deals that's kind of like mostly a 1-year deal with incentives?
Yeah, those haven't. It doesn't look like it's come out yet.
I hadn't seen that yet either. But I mean, I don't feel like it changes his value a ton from if he was in Arizona this year, because we weren't most likely going to get 16 games from Kyler, so you're most likely looking at either Colt McCoy or Clayton Tune. Either way, I don't think that Ryan Tannehill's an upgrade from those, but I don't think it's going to be a huge upgrade just because of the reasons that you brought up, like the lack of passing efficiency there, the lack of passing attempts there. The one thing I will say, though, is, I mean, you look at the rest of that depth chart, and outside of Treylon Burks, like, there's really no other receivers there. So, like, while he may not get, like, 11 targets a game, like, I don't think it's crazy if he still gets, like, 7 to 9 this first year, just because, like, I'm not a big Treylon Burks guy. I was pretty much out on this Titans offense anyways. So I was pretty much out on most of them except for Derrick Henry at this point, especially for dynasty purposes. And I just don't feel like it changes a lot. It's good for Will Levis, assuming he gets in next year, just because it's good having an alpha receiver like that. But it's not like we're talking about, 2018 DeAndre Hopkins anymore. Like it's a shell, not a shell of his older self, but it's like 80% of like the old DeAndre Hopkins. I think is about the best.
Yeah.
At this point. So I don't think dynasty wise it changes a lot. Like I feel like he's probably still going to be somewhere in the wide receiver 3 range. Which I feel like that's about the same. I don't think it changes a lot. If anything, slight upgrade for this year, just compared to the quarterbacks he was going to have in Arizona versus this year. But long term, I don't think it really changes a lot.
And does this nuke Treylon Burks' value for these next 2 years, in your opinion? Is he kind of more of a slow burn? And do you kind of think it's time to move off of him in dynasty?
No, I wouldn't say move off of him. If anything,
No,
it's
he's
like
a
buy low window here. Like if you're a Burks believer, which I'm not, so like I'm not going to be going out and sending out a bunch of offers for him. But I mean, he was picked where he was for a reason. He dominated the college level. You go clear back to his high school days, and he's the best player on the field. And so if you think he's going to be that player that he was every year and every level he's played before this, and I mean, it's probably the best time to go buy him right now. But I don't want to count on him in my starting lineup at all this year, unless maybe he comes out and proves us wrong, and the addition of Hopkins just opens things up for him and he just is able to shine now. But I don't know. I don't really see that happening. I think this is still going to be an offense where you're going to want Derrick Henry, and then maybe Hopkins is like your flex at the best. But outside of that, I'm still fading this offense.
Totally fair.
It's an offense that really can only support 2 consistent fantasy options. Not really. I mean, there are very few offenses that can support 3 fantasy options, like Bengals, Niners. It takes special weapons and a special quarterback, and it's no knock against Tannehill, but Tannehill just can't support 3 passing options, in my opinion.
Sure. Yep. But you guys got anything else to add, or cool if I wrap it up?
I mean, it makes the AFC South a little bit more interesting because we all thought the Jags were just going to run away with it. Now, I mean,
it makes them a better football team for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think the Jags now have to, take a step back and kind of reanalyze how they're going to attack the Titans this year because I think they're going to be the number 2 team in that division.
I agree. It extends the Titans' little window that they have. It's just a shame that whole AFC is just so tough now.
Yep.
But yeah, guys, that wraps up this edition of the Fantasy Six Pack News Cycle. If you haven't already, please smash that like button and please subscribe. We really do appreciate it. And then head on over to fantasy6pack.net and check out our plans. For Jordan Schultz, Michael Plant, I'm Dylan Clemens. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Peace out.